TGIF. This is all about Bitcoin. A show dedicated to all things questions and markets related to Bitcoin. A little V for the currency and Bitcoin. Big V for the network. A collective journey to understand, apply, and use this innovation, all Bitcoin, all the time. And I'm your host, Christine Lee. Checking in on Bitcoin right now. The CoinDesk Bitcoin price XBX index is currently trading at 37,100 or 200 rather. Bitcoin's trading pretty flat. It's up about 1% over the past 24 hours. The most reliable reference prices for institutions since 2014 are now published under the CoinDesk brand, trusted globally as the leader in crypto news, events, and data.
The chart of the day is brought to you by Crypto.com, the world's fastest growing crypto app.
All right, some Bitcoin options traders are making wagers on $200,000 Bitcoin by the end of the year, even as the cryptocurrency continues to struggle following last month's 35% drop. Dominant crypto options exchange Deribit saw a total of 425 Bitcoin call option contracts change hands on Thursday with a strike price of $200,000 and an expiration date of December 31st, according to Levide's data. The strike price is roughly 5 times the current level. Very bullish. However, of all the options listed on Deribit, the $100,000 call is the most popular, which you can see represented by the spiking light green column. A Bitcoin call option is a derivative contract that gives the purchaser the right but not the obligation to buy Bitcoin at a predetermined price. Theoretically, buying a call at a $100,000 or $200,000 strike price expiring on December 31st is a bet that the cryptocurrency will end the year above that level. Broadly speaking, however, the options market has a bearish bias as puts seen by the black columns, which lock in a sell price for Bitcoin, are in higher demand than calls. And joining me to discuss BTC price and other Bitcoin news is our Week in Review panel, CoinDesk Managing Editor of Technology, Christy Harkin in Toronto, as well as Managing Editor of Markets, Brad Cowan in Austin. Welcome you too. Happy Friday.
Hello.
Happy Friday, Christine.
Good, good. So, this has been a week full of great, very impactful news for Bitcoin, but the price has not been moving much. So we got to start off the show, though, with El Salvador. That was certainly the story of the week. El Salvador accepting Bitcoin as legal tender. Now the rest of Latin America is starting to sign on. We're hearing whispers of Paraguay, Uruguay even considering something to have Bitcoin more meaningfully used in the country. And even India is starting to turn a corner. They were banning Bitcoin. Now they're starting to consider it as an asset class, according to certain sources. And now the IMF is starting to have to address it. So, Brad, take it away first. How is this impacting Bitcoin in terms of price? Not much, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was kind of our big story. One of our big stories this week is just, this news that would, on the face of it, seem kind of bullish for Bitcoin, really didn't have much of an impact. Just, talking to some market sources, and just the market feels pretty heavy right now, and I mean, El Salvador, it's a tiny country, this is like a neat little announcement for El Salvador, and great for the Bitcoin people who announced it. This is kind of what the Bitcoiners have been talking about. And Bitcoin, would take over as the world's monetary standard. And here's kind of a first baby step towards that. And there's lots of other countries who are talking about various things. But,
kind of like planting the seed out there, banking the unbanked, as it were. And 70% of the country operates with remittances and the opportunities therein. What you were saying, Brad, I think before, was it had a neutralizing effect on the markets, at least, because it was quite bearish for Bitcoin. And perhaps in in terms of stabilizing Bitcoin and preventing it from falling further, it may have had that effect.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a big story that reverberated throughout mainstream media. People were talking about it, and Bitcoin has come off from $65,000 all-time high just a couple of months ago, and it's kind of been falling and falling and falling, and it's kind of stabilized now here in the $30,000 range. And certainly this absolutely had an impact on sentiment. If Galen were here, he would probably talk about demand, right? Demand is kind of what drives Bitcoin, is people buying it, new buyers coming in, and big investors. And so, yeah, go ahead.
Well, amid the bullish news, there's also the bearish news out of China that there's a crackdown on mining operations there. And this is hitting the hash power. And I believe, Christy, you had a chart on that you had pointed out to us. Maybe you could take it away.
Yeah, so there's been a drop in the hash rate lately, and it's been pretty dramatic. But it's mostly related to the news about China cracking down on some Bitcoin, or at least giving more guidance and cracking down on Bitcoin to a certain extent in some provinces. Different provinces are taking it into their own hands now. They're writing up their own sets of guidance, and some are outright banning it. Others are saying, well, we're mostly going to make sure that the mining is green, or the mining efforts are falling under the right regulatory category, and they have all the licenses. What we're seeing in this chart here, the big red circle, that is where the hash rate was last month when a bunch of miners got taken offline in Xinjiang province, mostly because there was a series of coal mining accidents that I discussed back then. The number of miners who were available to secure the network for Bitcoin went offline because they didn't have the power, because the coal plants had these accidents that shut them down, and that dropped. But then it went back up. You see it go back up. Well, now extremely to the right there, you also see it's way back down. And that's because many Chinese miners have been migrating. They've been turning off their miners, either because their province has been cracking down, or because they've decided preemptively they're going to move their equipment elsewhere. They're also in the process of migrating their miners, some of them, to areas that are hydroelectric powered. But even some of those provinces where they're using hydroelectricity, they're saying, nope, you can't even use that. So it's a little bit tenuous. On the other hand, the mining industry in North America, Northern Europe, various places around the world is also ramping up too. So the Bitcoin network will still be secure.
Yeah, and there's some conflicting reports out there. Yunnan was reported to be the fourth province in China to ban Bitcoin mining, but apparently that is a false report based on false information of some
There was a weird screenshot, apparently, that a reporter saw, and it disappeared, and they ran with it, and it got picked up. But apparently, our sources are saying that chances are it was legitimate screenshot, or it might have been the screenshot, but what they had screenshotted was not necessarily legitimate and can't be confirmed. And our sources are saying they're not hearing that that's the news, in fact.
Well, that just goes to show there's a lot of misinformation out there. And this week we also heard from former President Donald Trump saying that Bitcoin was a scam and that he'd rather have the dollar as the reserve currency of the world. We had Senator Elizabeth Warren also coming out, criticizing the volatility of Bitcoin as well as the danger of stable coins, and in effect proposing a central bank digital currency or digital dollar as an alternative. We're also seeing the ransomware attacks, and that is having perhaps a fear, uncertainty, doubt effect on Bitcoin. Is that correct, Brad?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Bitcoin, crypto, these are things that are not really that well understood by the broader public. And here you have either some government officials or thought leaders or reports in the press that are coming out and shaping opinion. And, I don't know if like Trump saying Bitcoin's a scam changes anybody's opinion, but maybe, I don't know if Elizabeth Warren, criticizing Bitcoin, if that changes opinion. I mean, obviously she does have a legislative role currently.
Well, they finally
so she
agree
could
on
influence.
something, Brad. It could be unifying the political establishment of the United States of America.
Yeah. It shows how much we still have to educate people about what Bitcoin really does and what it is and how it uses energy and why it uses energy and what is being done. I think that all of these things that you've mentioned, including the crypto ransomware, how it's a failure, I think, on the part of people to understand, and possibly us not explaining it well enough and loudly enough.
Let's move on to next week. So, Brad, we have a Fed meeting coming up next week. We also had some CPI numbers out this week. Inflation is on everyone's mind. How might that affect the markets going forward?
I mean, there's so much, like the story has really not changed kind of in a long time. And in terms of, inflation is going up as the economy is reopening, jobs are, job growth is slowing because businesses are having a hard time finding workers. But then there's all these other effects like airfares are going back up because people are flying again, and the question is, are these one-time effects, or are these, are these permanent price increases? And the Fed is sticking to its story that these are transitory, inflationary impact. And so the Fed's probably not going to really change its tone too much next week. I mean, one thing there, inching to a while back, Powell said, we're not even thinking about talking about tapering our balance sheet expansion, our asset purchases. I mean, maybe at this meeting next week, they'll start talking about thinking about talking about tapering, but I don't think that'll surprise anybody.
Brad, we also have a chart that you showed, showing Bitcoin's, market movement. And tell us what's going on here.
Well, I just thought it's an interesting chart. Bitcoin, we've seen this, last year, since last year, Bitcoin goes through these phases where, it just takes off, or it goes down, and then it goes in these periods where it's kind of sideways. So, earlier this year it took off, it went up towards that 65,000 all-time high, and then it kind of traded in this range you can see here between 50,000 and 60,000 for a while. And then it really had a step change down into where we are now, this zone between 30,000 and 40,000. I just think, if you kind of draw these lines, it's a pretty clean chart, and Bitcoin does trade in these ranges. And here we are, we're kind of stuck. If you look at the resistance according to technical analysis, they're seeing resistance at 40,000. And so, but, back to your point, Christine, like this week did seem kind of to sort of stabilize things.
Mm-hmm. So we're stuck in this $30,000 to $40,000 range with Bitcoin. Well, but on the tech side, Christy, Taproot might actually activate. We might actually see an update to the Bitcoin software. Hallelujah. Look at that.
And look at all those green blocks. So, yes, according to the parameters set forward by Speedy Trial, the activation method that they're going with that we've talked about in the past, if at least 90% of the blocks mined, the designated 2-week periods signal their support for the upgrade, then we can start the whole activation process. So to be really precise, 1,815 of the 2016 blocks mined within a difficulty period have to include this little piece of code that indicates that the miner who mined the block is in favor of the upgrade. All those chart indicator that has included that little bit of signaling code and said, yay, we're for it. So that benchmark of 1,815 blocks will be met sometime early tomorrow morning, we think. That doesn't mean that that's the end of it. It has to actually, the period has to finish. It won't lock in until the end of the difficulty period, which will happen at some point on Sunday morning. And even then, we're not going to get Taproot till the fall. So yay, get excited, but we're not. The funny thing is, we've known for a while that Taproot's a popular upgrade. It's got all kinds of support, and it's funny because Ben Carmen, a Bitcoin core developer, actually told us back, a month ago, it'll pass the signaling threshold most likely in the second difficulty period, and bingo, good for him. So keep in mind that for all the hype about Taproot, the average user is still not going to notice anything particularly new about Bitcoin for a while. So these are tools. They're the ones who are going to be able to, in order to build us better infrastructures and products that address privacy, security, and scaling.
I just want to break in and say you've been calling this for a few weeks, Christy, publicly.
Watching
I had the best though.
Earlier this week, and Bitcoin, it's clunky, it's slow. Consensus is hard, and for many Bitcoiners, they accept that it should be. And
it's a feature, not a bug.
Exactly. Well, to me, it's very hopeful. All this news with El Salvador, with Taproot, slowly it's working, and it's very promising. So thank you very much, Christy and Brad, for joining me this afternoon. Great to have an update. Right, that was our CoinDesk Week in Review panel with Managing Editor of Technology, Christy Harkin, Managing Editor of Markets, Brad Cowan, as well joining us. That's it for All About Bitcoin. I'm your host, Christine Lee. We'll do it all over again on Monday at 3 p.m. Also join me Monday morning at 9 a.m. for First Mover in New York, your first look at the day's global crypto news headlines. You're watching CoinDesk TV.